Glass pedestals, Jasmine Reeves smoothed down her dress for the fifth time, a simple navy blue cocktail number she'd splurged on specifically for tonight's charity gala. The fabric felt foreign against her skin, much like how she felt standing in the grand ballroom of the Westbrook Hotel, out of place. Despite her invitation, "Stop fidgeting," Trevor Blackwood whispered, his hand finding the small of her back. His touch, once comforting, now felt possessive. "You look fine." "Fine. Not beautiful, not stunning, just fine." Jasmine swallowed the small hurt and nodded. After 18 months together, she'd learned to recognize when Trevor was in business mode. Tonight was important for his investment firm, Pinnacle Partners, and she was determined not to disappoint him. "Blackwood, there you are," a silver-haired man approached, champagne flute in hand. "And who might this lovely creature be?" Trevor's smile widened, all teeth and charm. "Richard, meet Jasmine. She runs a small consulting business. Small, always small." Jasmine extended her hand, maintaining her composure. "Pleasure to meet you. I specialize in sustainable business practices for startups." Richard barely acknowledged her explanation before turning back to Trevor. "Did you see the Henderson portfolio numbers? Absolute gold mine." And just like that, Jasmine became invisible again. She'd built her business from nothing after leaving corporate life, helping eco-conscious entrepreneurs navigate the brutal marketplace. But in Trevor's world of hedge funds and million-dollar deals, her work was diminutive, cute even. As the night progressed, Jasmine found herself increasingly isolated at their table. Trevor worked the room, occasionally returning to introduce her to someone important, always with the same dismissive qualifier. "My girlfriend who runs that little green business." By the third introduction, the pattern became painfully obvious. She was an accessory, attractive enough to display but not accomplished enough to respect. "Champagne?" a server offered, breaking her spiraling thoughts. "Thank you," Jasmine said, grateful for the distraction. Across the room, Trevor stood with a group of investors, his confident gestures commanding attention. She'd fallen for that confidence 2 summers ago at a business networking event. He'd seemed genuinely interested in her passion for sustainable business models, asking thoughtful questions about her clients and philosophy. When had that changed? When had his interest transformed into tolerance, then dismissal? "You're Jasmine Reeves, right?" A woman in a crimson dress slid into the empty chair beside her. "Olivia Bennett. I've heard great things about your work with Greenspace Technologies." Jasmine blinked in surprise. "You know Greenspace?" "Know them? They're revolutionizing solar storage. Your sustainability framework helped them secure Series B funding." Olivia's eyes sparkled with genuine interest. "I'm with Venture Ecological Fund. We'd love to discuss potential collaborations." For the first time that evening, Jasmine felt seen. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, touching on emerging markets and innovation gaps. Olivia even took her business card, promising to schedule a meeting. The bubble of validation burst when Trevor returned, slightly flushed from alcohol. "Making friends, darling?" His tone carried a patronizing edge. Olivia extended her hand. "Trevor Blackwood? I'm Olivia Bennett from VEF. Your girlfriend is quite impressive." Trevor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Isn't she adorable with her little green crusade? Though between us, there's not much money in saving the world." Jasmine felt her face burn. "Trevor, what she needs is a proper position at a real firm," he continued, as if she weren't present. "I keep telling her to let me make some calls, get her something respectable." "Actually," Olivia replied coolly, "sustainable investment is the fastest-growing sector in venture capital right now." Trevor waved dismissively. "Temporary trend. The real money's in traditional markets." When Olivia excused herself, promising Jasmine she'd be in touch, Trevor leaned in. "Don't get your hopes up. These eco-funds talk big but deliver small." "That was humiliating," Jasmine whispered. "Don't be dramatic. I was helping you network." Before she could respond, the event host called for attention. The annual fundraising auction was about to begin, with Trevor serving as this year's auctioneer. He squeezed her shoulder before making his way to the stage. "And now, ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, "our auctioneer for the evening, Pinnacle Partners rising star Trevor Blackwood." The crowd applauded as Trevor took the microphone, all charisma and confidence. "Before we begin," Trevor said, "I'd like to acknowledge my girlfriend, Jasmine." He pointed toward her table, and suddenly all eyes turned her way. Her heart lifted momentarily. She's a living example of how even small efforts matter. Her little company might not change the world, but it makes her happy. And sometimes that's enough, isn't it? Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. Jasmine sat frozen, smile plastered on her face as Trevor continued the auction. His words echoed in her mind. Small efforts. Little company, not change the world, makes her happy. In that moment, watching him bask in the spotlight he'd created by diminishing her, something inside Jasmine shifted. The admiration she'd held for him cracked like glass beneath pressure. She saw clearly now what she'd been denying for months. Trevor didn't see her as an equal partner, but as a quaint diversion, one he could mock publicly without consequence. As the auction continued and guests bid thousands for charity packages, Jasmine made her own silent bid on her self-respect. By the time Trevor returned to their table, triumphant from his successful auctioneering, her decision was made. The pedestal she'd placed him on had shattered completely. Now she just needed to determine what to do with the shards. Hidden depths. The morning after the gala, Jasmine awoke before dawn, Trevor's arm draped heavily across her waist. His steady breathing filled their bedroom. His bedroom, she corrected mentally. Despite living together for almost a year, the penthouse apartment had never felt like hers. She slipped out from under his arm and padded silently to the kitchen. Coffee in hand, she watched the city skyline transform as sunrise painted the glass towers in golden hues. For 18 months, she'd been adapting herself to fit Trevor's world, modifying her speech, tempering her passions, accepting his helpful criticism. Last night had finally made her see the truth. No amount of adaptation would ever make her enough in his eyes. "You're up early," Trevor said from behind her, his voice thick with sleep. He approached, wrapping his arms around her waist, pressing a kiss to her neck as if nothing had happened. "Couldn't sleep," she replied, her body stiffening involuntarily. "About last night?" he murmured against her skin. "You seemed upset in the car ride home. Was it something I said?" Jasmine turned to face him. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." Trevor's expression shifted from confusion to dismissal. "Don't be so sensitive. I was complimenting you. By calling my business little, by suggesting it doesn't matter. That's not—" He sighed, running a hand through his tousled hair. "Look, I was trying to be encouraging. Not everyone can build something like Pinnacle. I don't want to build Pinnacle. I want to build Verdant Consulting my way." Trevor's phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it, immediately distracted. "We'll discuss this later. The Morgan deal needs attention." Just like that, her concerns were shelved, deemed less important than his real work. As he disappeared into his home office, Jasmine felt a strange clarity settle over her. This wasn't a single bad night. It was a pattern she'd allowed for too long. She spent the day packing essentials while Trevor worked behind closed doors. When her friend Daniela arrived to help, Jasmine felt a twinge of guilt seeing her confusion. "Are you sure about this?" Daniela asked, helping load boxes into her car. "Last week you were talking about the charity trip to Bali he planned for your anniversary." "I'm sure," Jasmine said firmly. "I just need some time to think." By evening, she had moved the basics to Daniela's spare bedroom. She left Trevor a note explaining she needed space, not quite a breakup, but a necessary pause. She couldn't face him directly, knowing his practiced charm might weaken her resolve. The following days passed in a blur of ignored calls and messages. Trevor cycled through concern, confusion, irritation, and finally anger. "You're overreacting," his final message read. "Call me when you're ready to be reasonable." 2 weeks into her self-imposed exile, Jasmine was sorting through digital files on her laptop when she stumbled across an unfamiliar folder. Pinnacle Q3 Internal contained documents Trevor had forwarded months ago when using her laptop during a weekend getaway. She'd forgotten about them entirely. Curiosity made her click, expecting boring financial projections. Instead, she found something disturbing: detailed plans for diverting funds from client accounts into offshore holdings, disguised as management fees. The documents showed systematic fraud involving millions of dollars, with Trevor's digital signature on every approval. Her hand trembled as she scrolled through spreadsheet after spreadsheet. This wasn't aggressive investment strategy. This was theft, carefully concealed from investors and regulators alike. "Oh my God," she whispered, the implications washing over her. A text notification interrupted her shock. Trevor again. "Dinner tonight? I miss you. Let's put this misunderstanding behind us." Misunderstanding. As if her feelings were merely a confusion to be corrected. She stared at the message, then back at the incriminating documents. The man she thought she knew, ambitious but ethical, was a carefully constructed facade. Beneath the charm lurked something predatory. Jasmine copied the files onto a secure drive, her mind racing. What should she do with this information? Report it to authorities? Confront Trevor? She needed advice, but who could she trust with something this explosive? The answer came when her phone rang. Olivia Bennett from the gala. "Jasmine, I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. I've been thinking about your work with sustainable startups, and I have a proposition for you." As Olivia outlined a potential partnership between Verdant Consulting and her venture fund, Jasmine felt a strange calm settle over her. Here was someone who saw her worth without qualification, who recognized her expertise without diminishment. "Actually, Olivia," Jasmine interrupted, "I have something important to discuss with you first. Something about Pinnacle Partners that you and your investors should know." "That sounds serious," Olivia replied, her tone shifting. "Why don't we meet in person? My office has private conference rooms." Jasmine glanced at the secure drive containing evidence of Trevor's fraud. "Yes, I think that would be best. There are some depths to this situation that need to be brought to light." As she ended the call, Jasmine realized she wasn't seeking revenge. She was pursuing justice. For herself and for everyone Trevor had deceived with his charismatic smile and hollow words. The path ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in months, she felt unquestionably right about her direction. The glass pedestal had not only shattered, she now held fragments sharp enough to cut through his carefully woven lies. The blueprint, the offices of Venture Ecological Fund, occupied the 22nd floor of a LEED-certified building downtown, all recycled materials and natural light. Jasmine felt a flutter of anxiety as the receptionist led her to a conference room where Olivia waited, elegant as she had been at the gala, though now in a tailored business suit. "Thank you for meeting me," Jasmine said, settling into a chair. Olivia's smile was warm but professional. "Your message sounded urgent. What's this about Pinnacle Partners?" For the next hour, Jasmine methodically presented what she'd discovered: the intricate system of fraud, the misleading of clients, the millions funneled into untraceable accounts. Olivia listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly grave. "VEF had considered a partnership with Pinnacle last quarter," Olivia revealed when Jasmine finished. "We withdrew when something felt off about their returns reporting. But this—" She gestured to the documents displayed on the conference room screen. "This is criminal. What should I do?" Jasmine asked. Olivia studied her thoughtfully. "That depends on what you want the outcome to be." "Justice," Jasmine replied immediately. "But I don't want to become collateral damage in the process." A legitimate concern. Olivia pressed an intercom button. "Marcus, could you join us, please?" Minutes later, a distinguished man in his 50s entered. Marcus Chen, VEF's chief legal counsel, as Olivia introduced him. After reviewing the evidence, he removed his glasses with a heavy sigh. Textbook securities fraud. The SEC would be very interested, but whistleblower cases can be brutal. They drag on for years, and reputations rarely survive intact, even for those doing the right thing. Jasmine's heart sank. "So there's no clean way to expose this?" "I didn't say that," Marcus replied, a subtle glint in his eye. "Sometimes the most effective approach isn't through bureaucratic channels, but through the court of peer opinion." Over the next 2 hours, a strategy emerged. VEF had significant connections throughout the financial world, including several major Pinnacle investors. With careful coordination, Jasmine could present her findings directly to those with the most power to act quickly. Pinnacle's hosting their quarterly investor showcase next week, Olivia noted, checking her calendar. All their key backers will be there. And Trevor will be presenting, Jasmine added, remembering his weeks of preparation. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Perfect timing. But this must be handled delicately. We're not talking about public humiliation. We're talking about controlled disclosure to the right people. The plan they crafted was meticulous. Jasmine would attend as Trevor's girlfriend, their temporary separation explained away as a minor disagreement now resolved. During the event, she would meet privately with 5 key investors, guided by Olivia, who had relationships with each. The evidence would be presented clinically, without emotion or accusation, just facts they needed to protect their investments. This isn't about revenge, Olivia emphasized as they finalized details. It's about stopping ongoing harm. Jasmine nodded, though part of her wondered if the distinction truly mattered. Was justice separate from vindication? Could she achieve one without the other? As days passed, doubts crept in. Was she overstepping? Would her actions seem calculated and cruel? She shared these concerns during a follow-up meeting with Olivia and Marcus. Having second thoughts is normal, Marcus reassured her. It shows you're approaching this ethically. Trevor made choices knowing the potential consequences, Olivia added firmly. You're not responsible for those consequences finding him. The final piece fell into place unexpectedly. During her preparation, Jasmine discovered an overlooked detail in the documents, a connection between Pinnacle's fraud and the very charity whose gala had been the site of her humiliation. Trevor had been siphoning funds from the foundation's endowment, using his position on their advisory board to conceal the withdrawals. This changes things, Olivia said when Jasmine called with the discovery. It's not just wealthy investors being deceived. It's a charitable foundation doing crucial work. Resolve strengthened. Jasmine reached out to Trevor, crafting a careful message suggesting reconciliation. His response came within minutes, eager, slightly condescending in his relief that she had come to her senses. They arranged to meet for dinner before the investor showcase. As she prepared for this preliminary encounter, selecting a dress Trevor had once complimented, Jasmine felt strangely calm. She wasn't returning to him. She was setting the stage for truth to emerge. Daniela watched her prepare with visible concern. Are you sure about this? Getting back with him after everything? Jasmine applied her lipstick with steady hands. I'm not getting back with him. I'm making sure he faces what he's done, to me and to everyone else he's deceived. Just be careful, Daniela warned. Men like Trevor don't accept consequences easily. That evening, across a candlelit table at Trevor's favorite restaurant, Jasmine played her part flawlessly, apologetic but dignified, willing to move forward. Trevor was charming as ever, though she now recognized the calculated nature of his attentiveness. I've missed you, he said, reaching for her hand. The apartment feels empty without you. I needed perspective, she replied, allowing him to interlace their fingers. Space to think about what I really want. And what do you want, Jasmine? His smile held the confidence of someone who already knew the answer, or thought he did. She met his gaze steadily. Recognition, respect, transparency. Of course, he agreed readily, though something flickered in his eyes, a momentary calculation. I've always supported your aspirations. The pause before aspirations was slight but telling. Nothing had changed. He still saw her work as a hobby, her concerns as trivial. Confirmation of her course felt like a weight lifting. Later that night, alone in Daniela's guest room, Jasmine reviewed the blueprint one final time. Each step was clear, each contingency considered. In 3 days at the investor showcase, everything would change. For Trevor, for Pinnacle Partners, and for her. This wasn't just about a public insult anymore. It was about the pattern it represented, the greater deceptions it mirrored. Trevor had built his success on illusions and exploitation, whether of investors' trust or her own emotions. The blueprint wasn't for revenge. It was for revelation. Unmasking Night, the Pinnacle Partners. Investor Showcase transformed the top floor of their downtown headquarters into an impressive display of wealth and confidence. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic city views. Carefully positioned lighting made everyone look their best, and waitstaff circulated with champagne and artisanal hors d'oeuvres. Jasmine entered on Trevor's arm, wearing a striking emerald dress, a deliberate choice, as green symbolized both money and growth. Her hair was swept up elegantly, her makeup subtle but flawless. She looked every inch the successful executive's partner. "You look incredible," Trevor whispered, his hand possessive at her waist. "Everyone's watching us." For once, Jasmine didn't mind the attention. That's the point of these events, isn't it? To be seen? His satisfied smile suggested he'd interpreted her words as acceptance of her ornamental role. If only he knew what being seen truly meant tonight. The first hour unfolded according to plan. Jasmine circulated gracefully, reconnecting with faces she recognized from previous functions. Trevor remained close, proudly making introductions, occasionally cutting into her conversations to redirect them toward Pinnacle's achievements. Each time he did, she nodded pleasantly, storing the interruption as fuel. When Olivia arrived with Marcus Chen, Trevor tensed slightly. "What are they doing here?" "VEF pulled out of discussions months ago." "I invited them," Jasmine replied calmly. "Olivia and I have been discussing a potential partnership for Verdant Consulting." Trevor's surprise quickly morphed into dismissive amusement. "Well, good for you, though I doubt VF makes investments quite at your scale." "You'd be surprised what interests them," she responded, catching Olivia's subtle nod across the room, the signal that their key targets had arrived. As Trevor was called away for pre-presentation preparations, Jasmine made her move. Olivia smoothly facilitated introductions to 5 of Pinnacle's most significant investors, gathered in a private anteroom adjacent to the main event space. Among them was Richard Montgomery, the silver-haired man from the charity gala, now regarding Jasmine with newfound attentiveness. "Ms. Bennett says you have something urgent to share," he said, gesturing for Jasmine to take a seat at the head of the conference table. "I do," Jasmine confirmed, connecting her secure drive to the room's presentation system. "What I'm about to show you directly impacts your investments with Pinnacle Partners." For 20 precise minutes, Jasmine presented the evidence, methodically, professionally, without emotion clouding the facts. The room grew increasingly still as spreadsheets, transfer records, and Trevor's own documented approvals filled the screen. When she finished, silence hung heavy. Richard was the first to speak, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You're certain of the authenticity of these documents?" "Completely," Marcus Chen confirmed. "We've had forensic accountants verify the methodology. The fraud is sophisticated but unmistakable." Another investor, a woman in her 60s with shrewd eyes, leaned forward. "Why are you showing us this before going to regulators?" Jasmine met her gaze directly. "Because you deserve the chance to protect yourselves and your clients before this becomes a public scandal. And because regulatory investigations can take months while your assets remain at risk. How convenient that you discovered this after your, what shall we call it, lover's quarrel?" This from a younger investor, skepticism evident in his tone. "I understand your suspicion," Jasmine acknowledged, "which is why everything I've shown you has been independently verified. This isn't about my relationship with Trevor. It's about your money and the charity funds being systematically misappropriated." The mention of the charity foundation shifted the energy in the room. These were people who sat on philanthropic boards themselves, who used their wealth not just for gain, but for social capital. Fraud against investors was condemnable. Fraud against charity was unforgivable. Richard stood abruptly. "The presentation begins in 15 minutes. I believe we should attend, with this information in mind." As they filed back into the main space, Jasmine felt a curious lightness. Whatever happened next was beyond her control. She had brought truth into the light. Now it would do its own work. Trevor spotted her rejoining the crowd and smiled broadly, misinterpreting her composed expression as admiration for the impressive event he'd orchestrated. On stage, the Pinnacle Partners logo glowed behind a podium, sophisticated animations highlighting their record of exceptional returns and integrity-driven investment. When Trevor took the stage, he was magnificent, confident, articulate, completely in command. His presentation was masterful, filled with projections of continued growth and innovative strategies. Had Jasmine not seen the evidence herself, she might have been convinced by his performance. And now, Trevor concluded, I'd like to open the floor for questions from our valued investment partners. Richard Montgomery stood first. His question came quietly but carried throughout the now hushed room. Could you explain the discrepancy between the returns reported to general investors versus those shared with offshore account holders? Trevor's composure flickered momentarily. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Richard. Perhaps we could discuss after. I think we should discuss it now, the shrewd-eyed woman interjected. Particularly the withdrawals from the Westbrook Foundation endowment. The room erupted in murmurs. Trevor's gaze darted across the crowd, landing on Jasmine with sudden comprehension. The betrayal in his eyes might once have wounded her. Now it simply confirmed she'd made the right decision. These are complex financial structures, Trevor attempted, his charm straining. Without proper context, certain transactions might appear fraudulent, Richard supplied. Because we've seen the documentation, Trevor. Comprehensive, damning documentation. Trevor's colleagues on stage exchanged alarmed glances. The company's CFO leaned forward to whisper urgently in Trevor's ear. As controlled chaos erupted, investors demanding answers, Pinnacle executives trying to maintain order, Jasmine felt Olivia touch her elbow. I think it's time for us to leave, she murmured. This will get messy and your part is done. Jasmine nodded, following Olivia toward the exit. Trevor's voice called after her, cracking with desperation. Jasmine! What have you done? She turned, meeting his gaze one final time. I showed them who you really are, just like you showed everyone who you thought I was. The symmetry wasn't lost on anyone watching. As security personnel began discreetly entering the room, summoned by alarmed investors, Jasmine walked away, her steps steady, her back straight. Behind her, the carefully constructed world Trevor had built began its inevitable collapse. Outside in the cool evening air, Jasmine took her first deep breath in what felt like months. Was that justice or revenge? She asked Olivia quietly. Does it matter? Olivia replied. Either way, the truth is now visible to those who needed to see it. As they walked toward Olivia's car, Jasmine realized something important. She felt no triumph, no vindictive pleasure in Trevor's downfall, only relief that the deception had ended, that consequences had found their rightful recipient, and that her own worth no longer depended on his validation. The unmasking was complete. What would come next remained to be seen. New foundations. 6 months passed like a strange dream, a period of endings and beginnings so intertwined that Jasmine sometimes struggled to separate them in her memory. The collapse of Pinnacle Partners dominated financial news for weeks. Trevor and 3 senior executives faced federal charges for securities fraud, with additional charges related to the misappropriation of charitable funds. Most of Pinnacle's legitimate assets were frozen pending investigation. Investors scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal, and former employees gave damning interviews about the company's internal culture. Through it all, Jasmine remained largely anonymous, a deliberate choice negotiated by Marcus Chen, who had arranged for her whistleblower status to remain confidential. She provided testimony to investigators, but was spared the public scrutiny that might have followed had her role been widely known. Trevor, however, knew exactly who had exposed him. His initial messages had been venomous, threatening, until his lawyers presumably advised against such communications. His final text to her had been strangely subdued. You could have just left. Why destroy everything? She never replied. The answer seemed self-evident. She hadn't destroyed anything that wasn't already corrupted at its foundation. Today, sitting in the newly renovated offices of Verdant Consulting Group, Jasmine reviewed quarterly projections with quiet satisfaction. What had once been her little company now occupied the entire 10th floor of an office building in the city's emerging green business district. 28 employees, specialists in sustainable business development and ethical investment, worked at collaborative stations throughout the open concept space. A knock at her door interrupted her review. "The VF representatives are here for the partnership signing," her assistant announced. Jasmine smoothed her blazer and moved to the conference room where Olivia waited with several colleagues. The partnership they were formalizing would create the city's first sustainable business incubator, funded jointly by VEF and profits from Verdant's expanding client base. "Ready to make history?" Olivia asked, extending the ceremonial pen. As Jasmine signed the agreement, applause erupted from her team gathered to witness the moment. She couldn't help but remember another signing ceremony she'd attended as Trevor's +1, where he'd whispered, "This is how real business is done, honey," as if she couldn't possibly understand. The irony wasn't lost on her. Later that evening, as celebration drinks wound down, Richard Montgomery made a surprise appearance. Now serving as chairman of the restructured Westbrook Foundation, he had become an unexpected ally in Jasmine's professional ascent. "I won't stay long," he said, declining a drink. "Just wanted to deliver this personally." He handed her an envelope bearing the foundation's seal. Inside was a formal invitation to join the foundation's board of directors, the same board Trevor had once served on while simultaneously defrauding the organization. "Why me?" Jasmine asked, genuinely surprised. Richard's expression was thoughtful. "Because you demonstrated something rare. Courage when it would have been easier to look away. The foundation needs that quality more than investment expertise." After he departed, Jasmine found herself alone on the office balcony, watching city lights illuminate against the darkening sky. Olivia joined her, offering a fresh glass of champagne. "Penny for your thoughts?" Jasmine accepted the glass with a smile. "I was thinking about foundations, how we build them, what makes them last." "Appropriate, given what you've built here," Olivia gestured to the office behind them. "Not just the business," Jasmine clarified. "Everything. My sense of self, my understanding of relationships, my definition of success." They stood in companionable silence before Olivia spoke again. "Have you heard the latest about Trevor?" Jasmine shook her head. She had deliberately avoided following the ongoing legal proceedings. "Plea deal. 5 years reduced from 12. Restitution payments to the foundation and investors." Olivia studied Jasmine's reaction carefully. "Does that feel sufficient?" The question wasn't simple. What measure could possibly balance the scales? Not just for the financial crimes, but for the subtle erosion of confidence he'd inflicted. The small cruelties disguised as helpful guidance, the public diminishment framed as affectionate teasing. "It's not about what happens to him," Jasmine finally replied. It never really was. "It's about what happens to everyone else because he was stopped." Olivia nodded, understanding. "And what happens to you? Don't forget that part of the equation. What had happened to her?" Transformation seemed too dramatic a word, yet she couldn't deny the fundamental shift in her perspective. She had discovered a capacity for calculated action she hadn't known she possessed. She had learned that silence didn't equate to weakness, that patience could serve justice more effectively than immediate reaction. Most importantly, she had learned that her value wasn't determined by others' assessment, not Trevor's dismissiveness, not Olivia's support, not Richard's approval. Her worth existed independently, requiring no external validation to be real. The sound of laughter drifted from inside, where her team continued celebrating their milestone. Among them were 2 former Pinnacle employees who'd reached out after the scandal broke, seeking work with a company built on genuine principles rather than manufactured appearances. "We should rejoin the party," Jasmine suggested, finishing her champagne. As they turned to go inside, her phone buzzed with a news alert. A profile of Trevor had just been published, examining his fall from grace. The accompanying photo showed him leaving court, expression defiant despite everything. Jasmine silenced the notification without reading further. His story no longer intersected with hers, except as a cautionary prologue in her personal history. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the foundation board position to consider, expansion plans to finalize, client relationships to nurture. Her company wasn't little anymore, nor was it merely hers. It had grown into something larger than her individual vision, supporting livelihoods and advancing principles she believed in deeply. The night Trevor had mocked her work in front of his peers felt like a lifetime ago. The woman who had sat frozen in humiliation that evening would hardly recognize the one who now stood tall, confidently leading her own enterprise. As Jasmine rejoined her team, accepting congratulations and sharing in their excitement for future projects, she realized something profound. The greatest revenge wasn't exposing Trevor's crimes or witnessing his downfall. It was this: living authentically, building something meaningful, and recognizing that she had never needed his approval to be extraordinary. The glass pedestal she had once placed him on had not only shattered, its fragments had been repurposed into something far more valuable, a foundation of her own creation built to last.